My name is Judy Grinnell, and I am the chairman of an organization called the Hoosick River Revival Coalition. The mission of our organization is to take a look at the flood chutes that are in North Adams. The Hoosick River flows through those high, wide concrete flood chutes, and they flow through that because in the 20s and 30s, the city suffered from serious flood damage. And so the Corps of Engineers, at the request of the city, came in and built those flood chutes. They've done their job. However, they have also prevented the public from seeing the river, from using the river. Fish can't live in the river. And those chutes were built in the 50s. We're now in 2011. And engineers are looking at different ways of creating flood control systems and allowing people to have access to a river while that river is protected from creating flood problems for a city. And so our goal is to see what we can do in North Adams so that we can enjoy our river, which is really a beautiful river with fresh cold water fish in it, not in the chutes, but before and after that. And so people can maybe walk in it. So people could maybe put boats in it. And that's our goal.
Good morning, I'm Howard Itzkowitz, and we're at City Hall in North Adams. Here at City Hall in North Adams, along this river, which is really right now a concrete channel, we're beginning our tour of the river. The river in North Adams, as you know, is the reason why North Adams exists at all. The river powered the mills. The river is historically a very critical part of North Adams. And that's why I feel that this particular part is very critical for its restoration. You hear all the noise in the background. The Hadley Overpass is being restored. We have, at this junction in the river, we have the railroad, the highway, and the river all converging in one point. Okay? This is the nucleus of North Adams, and from here to Masmoka, we see almost every aspect of the way humans have interacted with this river since the beginning of North Adams. We have automobile and truck traffic on Route 8. We have Route 2. Again, we have the train. We see the back of Heritage Square here, where the train has come through right from the beginning of North Adams. And we can see that this portion is where City Hall is located, is a cultural center showing how the river and a city have grown together. It's especially important to restore this. We have connections here to Masmoka. We have a pedestrian bridge that goes over the train tracks and links with Heritage Square on this side, Masmoka on that side. We're at the back of City Hall, and there's a connection here to Main Street. So all of these things take place within a block of where we're standing right now. Very important place. Very difficult to restore this, but very essential for the life of North Adams and the restoration of the river.
Well, it's a very long, complex process. The chutes are about 2.5 miles long, and there is the southern branch that starts, the chutes start at Knoll Field and come in, go through Heritage Park, go through Masmoka, right in the middle of the Masmoka campus. The northern branch, the chutes start at the Eclipse Mill, come down by Union Street and then River Street and meet just outside of Massmoka and then continue to Williamstown. To change those chutes takes the brains of an engineer. To do something that works for the entire city, we have to work with city officials. There are businesses, and of course I've just mentioned the museum. So all of these entities have to be part of a discussion about what to do. The other important factor is money. We have raised some money so that engineers have looked at the chutes and have suggested to us how they might be changed, but this was a very preliminary study. Our next step is to have what's called a master plan done, and for that we will have more studies done by engineers and city planners, and we will create probably about a 15 to 20 page booklet that will take each section of the river, look at how the chutes might be modified, and take that adjacent corridor, probably 20 to 50 feet on either side, and look at how might we modify that corridor so it becomes an asset for the city. Right now, I think a lot of people would say the river is an eyesore. We do have flood chutes, we're protected from flooding, but we can't use that river. And contemporary thinking is there are riverfronts that can be modified so they become assets.
Hi, I'm Lawrence Stevens with the Hoosic River Watershed Association and also with the Revival Coalition. And we're in Knoll Field, home of the Steeple Cats in the summer. When people drive into Knoll Field, they are confronted with the flood control chutes. Perhaps not all that attractive, look more like a wall than a river. We'd like to see what we can do to convert walls into rivers, or at least to provide access that walls deny. How do people know if there's a river there if they can't see it? So from here on south down to Hunter Foundry Bridge, the river has been removed from the wetlands with which it was originally associated and has been dredged and is either in concrete walls or in riprap, which is stone barriers along the river, or in berms, which are earthen containers for the river. One possibility as we look at naturalizing the river and improving life for the aquatic creatures is to return the river to its floodplains.
We do believe that in addition to creating a better habitat for fish and for wildlife by modifying the chutes, that will in turn serve as an economic engine for the city. People all over the world of all ages, all socioeconomic levels, love rivers. And so our studies indicate that if we were to modify the chutes so that the river flowed in a way that was lovely to look at, flowed in a way that people could maybe use it in certain parts, we would end up with people wanting to live near the river, people wanting to have little businesses by the river, people wanting to have parks, historical markers. So all of that would create another resource, another reason for people to come to North Adams. We have mountains, we have streams in our mountains, we have museums, we have art galleries. We could have a river too.
Hi, I'm Elena Traister. I teach environmental science at MCLA. We're standing here at Knoll Field next to the Hoosic River, actually where the flood control transitions from being these sort of earthen berms, which are, they look kind of natural, but actually they're underlaid by clay. And for that reason, it's required that all the vegetation be periodically removed from them. So you can see that there's just a kind of flat grass going down this berm, which continues to provide flood protection. You see the river is really well contained in between these two berms here. And then these berms transition to the concrete walls that you've been hearing about. So this flood control system affects the river in a number of ways. You can see that even though it looks sort of like a natural river, there are some things that are missing. One very important thing is shade, and without shade, the water in the river heats up more than it would naturally if there were trees overhanging the river. Another way that in turn influences what's going on in the river is how it influences what fish can live in this river. So in the Hoosic River, we actually have, or would have, native trout, so brook trout, and also some introduced trout that are self-sustaining here now, brown trout from Europe. And people come to this area to fish these very large trout out of the river. But trout require cold, highly oxygenated water. And when you allow the water to heat up, it can't carry as much oxygen, and that in turn limits how much the trout can thrive in this river, how big they can get, how many of them can live here. So part of the goals of improving this river is in part to help the fish that naturally live here to maintain that cool, oxygenated water that's necessary for them to thrive.
On the tour, we are now at Mass Mocha. And as you can see, the river is flowing behind me in between two buildings. The river actually flows through the middle of the Mass Mocha complex. And the part of the river that you can see behind me is what we saw down by Noel Field. This is the branch that comes in from Cheshire, flows by Noel Field, Joe Wolf Field, and goes through downtown behind City Hall, and then comes in here. The river continues through additional buildings at Mass Mocha and comes out down by Tyler Street, where it meets the branch that we saw at the Eclipse Mill, which is the North Branch. You will soon see all parts of that, but right now, just take a look and ask yourself, what could we do with the river since it's so close to the buildings? Well, the reality is probably we're not going to be able to change much of the river now as it flows in between these two buildings. However, what's very exciting is that Mass Mocha is working with us to create a sculpture garden that will be open to the public. You will not have to come into the museum. You can enter the sculpture garden from West Main Street, sorry, right in back of Subway.
Hi, I'm Cindy Del Pepper. I'm with the Massachusetts Division of Ecological Restoration and happily part of the Hoosic River Revival Coalition. We are standing at Willow Dell. This is a spot in the river that's somewhat hidden. People do not realize that the north branch of the Hoosic, which we're next to, dips under Route 2, makes a big arc, and then goes back under Route 2 a little farther down on Route 2. And this site is a site that experienced the worst of the flooding during the Great Floods almost 60 years ago. So here, the river is somewhat less strong in its movement because it's rounding this bend, and that's slowing the energy a little bit. And here we have this wide floodplain that's being underutilized. Here there's a possibility where we could terrace down to the river, creating a park, making the river accessible to the people of North Adams and the visitors to the city. And the great thing about this spot is it has a natural flood protection. The backside of the Conti School is very steep. It rises up very quickly, and that naturally protects this area from flooding. And as the hill to the river left gets redeveloped, there's a lot of possibilities for creating interconnected areas that bring people from the new development down to the river and open up the vista.
In Fitchburg, Massachusetts, the North Nashua River also flows through their downtown in concrete flood chutes, very much like ours. About 7 years ago, people like the Hoosick River Revival Coalition got together and said, what can we do to modify the chutes to make it an asset for our downtown? Excuse me. And they went through the same steps that we are. They raised money from private individuals, from businesses, from recreational organizations, from state agencies that support river revitalization. And I can't tell you the cost for what they did, and for viewers who have not seen this, what Fitchburg has done so far is they have created a path along their river. They have also taken down one wall of a chute in their downtown and created a park right next to it. I believe that it has been about 6 or 7 years from beginning to end, but it's not ended. Their river, believe it or not, theirs flows through 7 miles of their city. And so they have much more that they'd like to do. But the major thing they did that is related to what we're doing is that they were able to get permission from the Corps of Engineers to take down one wall and create a park. And viewers might wonder, well, what's going to happen if it floods? Well, according to the studies done by engineers and by the Corps of Engineers, it is okay to take down that wall, because if the water comes in very high, they can, the water can go up to the park and not really do a lot of damage. There are no businesses there, no homes there. And there is also a berm. A berm is a mound of dirt and grass. And so they have built a berm of about 5 feet that would stop the water as in any way that's necessary.
Of course, this dam was what provided power to the Eclipse Mill, which we'll take a look at in a minute. But the power generated here serviced the mills, and at this point in time, it is non-functioning as a hydropower system. I'm exploring the ability to bring this back so as to bring power back to North Adams and the Eclipse Mill in particular. As you can see, it's at a gorgeous spot here. You've got a great elevation drop, so it's a very natural power source. And you can see the rock cuts and the formations of millions of years of natural movement here. As you may know, the Natural Bridge State Park is up above us here, and it's the northern branch of the Hoosick River and its tributaries which are causing this water to come through here. There are fishermen who have been able to catch some actually quite big trout here, so we know it's good. Unfortunately, what happens is as the fish have the potentiality of going through, they get stuck at the other dam. So typically the fishing takes place up here and some very big natural trout in the water.
Our goal would be to not only maintain the viability of the river, but to encourage the long-term stability of it so that it remains an economic engine for the city and remains an environment that is good for wildlife.
So we're now down a few hundred feet from the Eclipse Dam. We're onto a minor dam here, which was constructed when the concrete channel was developed here in the 1950s by the Corps of Engineers. What had happened is that from time to time there were major floods that occurred when the snow melts and heavy rains occurred and washed out buildings just beyond the Eclipse Mill behind you. And as a result, there was lots of destruction of economic value, and this happened about once every 10 years, and there were some real major ones which caused a severe amount of destruction. And at the 1940s and 1950s, the common strategy by the Corps of Engineers was to develop these concrete chutes. So we are stuck with them at the moment, and part of the project of the Hoosick River Revival is to figure out ways to make them more livable, make the city appreciate that this is a river. As we saw from above, the river is wild. There's a lot of nature up there, a lot of fish, but now as it hits this smaller dam and this concrete chute, no fish can survive here. So this is really a no man's or no fish's land, and is a dead zone from here throughout the city. So the reason I took you up ahead was to show you what the river was like and what it could be again possibly. So what we have here now is just a couple of inches of water over the concrete, and typically the concrete raises the water temperature about 7 degrees higher than normal, and that would kill the fish even if they were in there. But the fish are stuck behind the dam here, so if you want to catch some good fish, actually there are a lot of fish there because they also catch a lot of the, eat a lot of the insects that get washed down from the river.
Some parts of the river will be modified so that fish can live in it. The problem now for fish is that the flat concrete bottom has no rocks in it, it has no vegetation, it has no flies, it has nothing that would enable fish to live. So we would like to create, in some parts of it, in some parts of the river, an environment for fish.
Mentioned this is the Eclipse Mill. It was in the 1800s until the early 1900s a very active complex of cotton mills, and each of the mills along this river, the old-timers and some of the stories talk about how on different days it was red, some days it was green, and depending upon the color, locals in the middle of the city would know which mills were working that day. So there were some cotton mills further up in the Clarksburg area. There were some woolen mills, I should say. We had the cotton mills here. And the dyeing that occurred, they just dumped the raw leftovers into the river, so it was a very smelly, strong-colored mess. And so in that regard, we're very lucky that it's cleaner. You can see some birds now and what have you living here. But because it's only a thin amount of water, it really doesn't function as a river anymore. You can see that the river is banked, the concrete channel, so that any water that does come down gets pushed across it so as to reduce the amount of strength. And so you see a lot of dry areas, and from time to time the whole river bottom here in the concrete is in fact dry and just concrete. So a few years ago I had the idea of wanting to express my interest in the river and started something called Hoosick River Lights, which was to use art as a way of bringing the focus of this river back to the downtown. Because if you talk to a lot of people, especially newcomers, they thought this was a drainage ditch, and in fact it does and has acted as such. So part of the revival is to bring this back to the beauty that it was at one point in time, and still protect the city from any flood dangers that might occur.
And so our goal is to see what we can do in North Adams so that we can enjoy our river, which is really a beautiful river with fresh cold water fish in it, not in the chutes, but before and after that. And so people can maybe walk in it, so people could maybe put boats in it. And that's our goal.